Welcome to this month's winter webinar that's hosted by us here at TIAH. We are focusing on different farming business models. And today we're really delving into those details of things like contract farming, share farming, joint ventures, and any one of these that might actually be an answer to farmers or aspiring farmers who are looking for something beyond sort of traditional ownership and tenancy. It's really lovely to have you with us. It's lovely to see so many names and taking the time out this evening to join us. Gives me great pleasure to introduce today's headline speaker. This is Gary Markham. He's Director of Land Family Business. Gary advises clients on such diverse subjects such as succession planning, restructuring advice, mediation, management accounts, and tax advice. Gary regularly produces benchmarking data from clients' annual management accounts and uses this to help identify strengths and weaknesses and to challenge business structures and practices. And he's also a member of the Agricultural Law Association. I'll give him a chance in a second just to do a bit more of an introduction for himself. And we're also joined by Claire Eastham, who unfortunately the camera is not quite working yet, so we've only got Claire's audio, but we're working on that in the background. But she is a dairy farmer based in Dorset. Together with her husband, Martin, they run 140 head spring calving herd on a Dorset County Council farm. They started their route into agriculture via share farming in 2015 before successfully gaining a council tenancy in 2017. Claire also works off farm to help other farmers access grant schemes such as SFI and facilitates a local farmer cluster group. And finally, I'm Linda. I'm head of membership here at TIAH. So Gary, I'm going to start with you. Do you want to just do a little introduction about yourself and kind of what your business does to support farming businesses?
Thank you very much, Linda. Good evening, everybody. Yes, so I set up Land Family Business several years ago now, only because I found that's working in other accountancy firms, like Grant Thornton, most of my life, that accountants just normally deal with numbers. So I wanted to deal with families as well. And in farming, families are very much intermingled with the numbers. So the clue's in the name, Land Family Business. So we set this up several years ago, and we have a fairly small team, about a dozen people, and mainly, I suppose, focusing on strategic tax. But we do also do farm accounts and accounts production, etc. So most of it is out on the farm, talking to people, basically.
Brilliant, thank you. And Claire, if you can hear us, are you able to tell us just a little bit about your farm setup, please?
Hi, so sorry guys that you can't see me. My name's Claire Eastham. My husband and I, like Linda said, took on a county council farm in 2017. In 2019, we were lucky enough to get some more land next door. So we now run a spring calving system, selling our milk to barbers for cheese production. We started our farming journey in 2015 on a share farming venture with £20,000 worth of savings and a £40,000 loan from the bank.
Amazing, thank you. So as I said when we started, this is a really meaty topic. So I think if we sort of start with Gary, maybe you can give us sort of like a quick snapshot just of what the main different types of models that exist in farming. So like off the top of my head, I think we've mentioned a few already: tenancies, partnerships, share farming, contract farming, things like that. But what are they exactly?
Okay, Linda, that's quite a mixed bunch you've just presented there. So what I'd like to do is to set them out logically, okay, into different sections, if you like, of what they are. So let's unmix them. So most farming businesses, farmers partnerships, okay, family partnerships. And then quite a few also more and more now farmers companies, and some of our clients have both a farming partnership and companies. And then a few actually have LLPs, which are limited liability partnerships. So you have the limited liability of a company and the tax freedom of a partnership. Okay, so those are the sort of three main business structures that farmers operate within. And then something you mentioned there, tenancies. So those farming businesses obviously use land. So some use land owned, and some use land tenanted, and sometimes there's a mixture of those. One of the points you mentioned was a grazing license. So that is a bit of an oddball, basically. So that is somebody providing land for somebody else to use for their livestock. But technically, selling grass by the mouthful is how I normally describe it. So if I had some land and I was letting it on a grazing license, I would be letting Linda, if you had some sheep, I would be letting you graze my land, but I would be farming it because I would be producing grass, fertilizing grass, doing the hedges and fences and everything. You'd be coming along and I'd be selling a crop to you. So that's a bit of an aside. And then we come on to joint ventures. Okay, so what I'd like to do, there's a slide there, I think that you can share with people, which this is a slide I use in quite a few of my talks. It's LFB joint venture decision matrix. Okay, so you can see on the left hand side there that we're looking at things that land family business look at, basically. So you've got inheritance tax, cost sharing, future flexibility, excluding BPS, which almost disappeared now in any case, but that would be excluding SFI moving forward. So look at the last but one, personal well-being. So we're bringing that into, and that's what we specialize in, looking after families as well. Then at the bottom, machinery sharing. Okay,
let's try that.
So there are the various types of share farming. There's share farming joint ventures, which is our share farming contracting, and it'd be interesting to see how Claire's share farming agreement was. And then I've developed a hybrid model for tax planning purposes mainly. You can see up there, and on the right hand side we have machinery syndicates, which is my pet joint venture. So I do not believe that contract farming is very much a joint venture. Joint venture is sharing costs and output. So contract farming actually doesn't tick all the boxes for me. It doesn't tick. It's a question mark on the inheritance tax as well. Doesn't deal with personal well-being either. So a true joint venture to me would be a machinery syndicate, which I will describe a bit later on, I believe, in the questions. I'll come back to the detail of the machinery syndicate. But so what I've been through is farmers partnerships, the LLPs or companies, and then they use the land in terms of farm their own or tenancies or a mixture of both, and then those partnerships or companies join the joint ventures. Okay, so I've answered you in 3 stages, Linda. I hope that's clear.
That's perfect. I suspect we will probably come back to some of this in a little bit more detail.
In other words, no. Okay, right.
Just to kind of change tack slightly, Claire, do you want to talk us through sort of what steps you took to get the farm that you manage today, and see if there's any sort of correlation between what you've done and sort of where Gary's coming from?
So in 2015, I suppose prior to that, we had networked quite a lot, and we had made sure that contractors in the area, consultants rather, in the area, kind of knew what we were looking for.
It's dipping in and out a little bit. Do you want to try again? Okay, maybe we'll ask you to leave and come back, Claire, and we'll just kind of continue. We'll pick up back if you join back on the call. Is that all right? Okay, Gary, we'll just jump back to you then, if that's all right.
Okay.
So I guess kind of then coming back to sort of where you started with those different types of joint ventures, I guess really my question would be, you've obviously met with lots of new clients, and I'm assuming a lot of them come to you not really knowing where to start and what to do. So are there sort of questions that you typically ask to sort of start the thinking process to figure out what model might be best for them?
Sure. Okay. So, but they're in different categories basically. So you may have 2 medium-sized farms. Okay, I'm talking arable at this moment in time. 2 medium-sized farms of 400-500 acres. Okay, who have got their own machinery and got their own combines. So if you bring together 2 or 3 of those farms, they will be existing businesses that come together. And the biggest problem we have in the industry at the moment is the value of machinery, and so it's all about actually bringing down and sharing that machinery. Okay, and there are various ways of avoiding conflict, etc. I'll come back to, but the machinery on an arable farm would be well over £300 an acre. So I'm still in acres, not hectares. So 3 to 400 on some of them. You know, so therefore. it's almost not a viable situation in arable farming at the moment with that amount of kit needed. So if you get 3 or 4 farms together to make 1,500 acres, 3 farms 500, I'll just keep it simple, then that machinery capital can be brought down to about £280 an acre. And that is a big step forward in terms of helping. Okay, so that's the 2 farmers come together, and then obviously we have the Clares, if you like. So I have, and I really like helping young people to get into agriculture. So and then I do get approached by farmers' sons and daughters and outside people in agriculture as well. It's quite difficult to get in. One of the plus points that we do have is that I have around about 15 to 20 fairly large machinery syndicates, groups of farmers that have formed just machinery syndicates. Okay. And nowadays it's very useful to have a flock of sheep as a management tool. And so normal, if you ask a normal arable tractor driver, he says that he'll say there's 2 types of sheep: live ones and dead ones. So, and obviously there's a bit more to it than that. So they're not experienced of running sheep. So it gives a young person to bring a flock of sheep into that farming business, and the farm business would be anything from 5,000, 6,000 acres in total with all the farms, and allow them to use the facilities and allow them grazing free of charge. So that really and there's some really nice stories of young people, setting up with sheep in that way, and then the farmers benefit. Of course, it's everybody benefits. It's a win-win situation because the sheep graze all the cover crops, etc., and they're in full control of them. If you get your neighbour to bring sheep in, he takes them out a fortnight later than you wanted to, etc. So so that works. So there's a whole range of existing farmers coming together, and then you have farmers who want to semi-retire, whose children, not children, but grown up next generation, not coming into the business, which is very common nowadays, and who want somebody else to help farm the land. So you offer them a contract farming arrangement, and sometimes that's tendered for. So various farms will tender for that, and you choose the best one. And so so it's quite a mishmash of everything, if you see what I mean, depending on where they come from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it must be a bit of a minefield if you're coming into this, kind of knowing where to start. If you've not come from a farming family, I can imagine this must feel so foreign.
Yeah. So if anybody approaches me, I always ask them to come and have a chat with me, and I chat them through all of that, because there's no way that a new entrant's going to start a contract farming arrangement and contract farm somebody's land. That's just not going to happen. And unfortunately, the industry's a bit locked up like that. You can't. It's very difficult to get new entrants in, but there are opportunities. I've got a client at the moment where I'm heavily involved with. We're looking for a dairy share farmer at the moment. Yes. So there are opportunities around. So basically, I ask. I know who I get to know who they are, what they're looking for, and then slot them into the correct situation, and then the correct model.
Yeah. So do you almost act as an introductory? Like, do you introduce people as well, or is that sort of out of your?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. And it's quite interesting when you've set up. So we have, as I said, many machinery syndicates around. Once 2 or 3 farmers have got together, they get known in the region, and then somebody else will want to join. And there are various ways that we get them to join in, either as full members, or as associate members, or we just contract for them. So you can see it's quite a mixture, even within the joint venture, and some joint ventures actually start farming in their own right and rent land.
Yeah, I can see that.
So we've done that as well. So you name it, we can do it.
Claire, are you back with us?
I am here. I don't know if you can hear me or see me.
We can definitely. Well, we can't see you, but we can hear you, and we'll take it. So, do you want to start again and just tell us a little bit about how you got into the farming?
I think the first kind of key thing is to make sure you're networking, and that consultants, like Gary said, in the area know that you're looking and know what you're looking for, and also be known for being good at what you currently do, so that people know that you're going to be able to do it if they kind of joined a venture with you. So we were fortunate enough to be told that a gentleman and his wife were looking to go back into dairy farming, and were looking for a couple to run the holding. So we actually came up with all the kind of figures and the business plans in order to do that with them. So we bought 20% of the herd.
Oh, wow.
The farmer provided the land, and we gave him a rental figure, and my husband was the herd manager, and he got paid for that role. So everyone had money coming in. Anyone that's listening that was or is a dairy farmer, obviously 2015 saw the milk price crash from 32p a litre to 16p a litre. And that really focused the mind for us. The fact that we were able to keep going and be profitable at that time in those years with that milk price. And I think that kind of empowered us really to think, if we got through that, we could kind of get through anything. I was still working full time in my job, and so the £40,000 loan that we had from the bank we paid off within 2 years. We lived in a caravan on site, but that gave the bank kind of knowledge and kind of trust in us that we could do it. So when we approached them to get more borrowing for the tenancy, they were willing to back us. So in 2017, we took on a Dorset County Council farm. It was quite quick in terms of we weren't expecting anything to come up or for us to actually be successful on our first application for a farm, but fortunately we were. And then we were in the position, oh no, what do we tell the chef? So we'd always kept an eye on a few young people that we thought might be able to take over from us. And there was one young chap, and he was fortunately in the position where he could take over from us, but he couldn't buy our share out straight away. So there were a couple of intervening years where we had a share in that business still and here, which meant that we had to borrow more money to get going here. Basically, we had to completely start again, but we were fortunate that we were able to do that because of the track record previously with the bank.
Wow. So it sounds like a lot of this, Claire, was down to sort of almost the hard, like, it sounds like a lot of networking and you building a reputation and keeping an eye on other people's reputations, because I feel like that's probably what this all boils down to, right? In terms of, otherwise, how would you find somebody to take over your share farming agreement?
I think it's all about relationships, and I think farmers can be kind of guilty of thinking, oh, I can't go to that, I haven't got time, I haven't got, that's not work. But things like the Dorset Grassland Society, discussion groups, are absolutely critical in us kind of getting our name out there, and also learning from other people and kind of building a group of mentors that we could then call upon, as we had problems. And I will say, like, it's completely different going from a herdsman to a share farm, where you've still got that share farmer to call upon if you want a little bit of advice, to taking on your own tenancy. I think people think that it'll just be the same. I think some herds people probably think, well, I'm running it anyway, but there's a lot you don't see, doing the accounts, doing the VAT return, ordering all the things, making sure things are there on time. So it is a big step. So I think having that kind of mentors around you is really helpful. And like Gary said, making sure it's the right team, so the right mix of personalities if you are going to go into a joint venture or share farming as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So Gary, just kind of coming back to you then, in your experience, what are the sort of biggest issues, I guess, that are going to influence going in one direction or another?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So just an interesting bit in Claire, so if you don't mind. So Claire, you said you was that a new herd you bought into? The farmer bought a new herd as well?
Yeah. Basically, he had bought 160 bulling heifers from Ireland, got them in calf, and then was like, what do I do? He didn't know whether to sell them or set up a dairy. So we were really fortunate to be like, please set up a dairy. And it had been a dairy in the past, the farm, but a new parlour had to go in, everything. And we actually made the decision mid-November, and because he'd listened to the Irish farmers, everything was starting calving the 1st of January, which over here it's kind of mid-Feb onwards. And yeah, so we had 6 units in, milking 80 cows. And obviously the parlour was going to be like a 20-40 swing over. So yeah, the pressure was on, so it definitely wasn't a relaxed start to share farming either.
Sure.
And obviously carving in 160 heifers
Sure.
is a task
Yeah,
in itself.
interesting. And you had a share in the herd. So in a share farming agreement like that, it is not an entity. It's not a legal entity, Claire, is it? It's a memorandum account. It's how you without, I'm not asking you the details of what you did, but you shared the output from the cows basically, and shared the variable costs as well.
Yes.
In a memorandum, and that produced a split. So basically, you and your husband are running your business, and then the farm was running his business, and the in between was a non-entity joint venture. Not a partnership; it's just a joint venture. Is that correct, Claire?
We actually went into partnership, but yeah, that's
Oh, did
because
you?
we were naive and there wasn't webinars like this around at the time.
Right.
So yeah, I know what you're saying. You would normally have like a number 2 account.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And run it from that. So he did have his business, we had our business, but we also had the dairy as a partnership, and we're
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, sure.
For the percentages.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I've set some up like that where the entity in the middle, the partnership, would be a limited liability partnership. So therefore you'd be protecting the farmer and protecting yourself, but it's still a partnership for tax purposes. So what you described there would have worked quite well as a limited liability partnership, I would suggest. But there aren't many of those around. But rather than an open partnership, if I was advising the farmer for this young couple coming along to milk his cows, I would say, have limited liability and have an LLP, basically. Does that make sense, Claire?
Yeah, 100%. I think with our so the chap that we went into partnership with been like a cattle dealer all his life, basically. So everything was kind of done on a handshake and trust, and very, very kind of adverse to paperwork. So we did have all the paperwork in the background, but very much just you look a good fit for the job. I like you. You can
get over
it. So we were really lucky, because obviously I know of things that go wrong as well, but we were very fortunate with how everything turned out for us.
Yeah, sure, I can see that. Yeah, but that's quite common in farming, isn't it? A handshake. Here we are. Here am I talking about the legalities, but the whole industry is run on a handshake, really. Yes. Yeah. So the biggest, if Linda, you said the biggest issues that influence going in one direction or another. Is that what you said from memory? Yeah. Okay. Yes. So going back to what I was saying earlier, actually, it depends who they are. Are they the Claires of the world who want to start off, or most of the time, I don't get many young people actually like that, but most of the time they are already operating and want to joint venture to spread their fixed costs, spread the machinery costs in particular. So you might have a farmer whose next generation are not coming on board, and then a farm worker retires, and that would be a huge opportunity to look around. So rather than reinstate another employee on that farm, you would look to your neighbours and say, look, shall we share an employee, and then it goes on from there. And quite a few of the ones that I do, we set up in stages. Okay. And I'll go through a detailed one shortly, actually. But we set up in stages. So quite often you would perhaps share a machine to start off with, forage harvester or a combine harvester, and see how it goes. So what I normally do is spend hours, quite a few hours, talking through what can go wrong. And I think that's the best bit of advice I can give to people who are looking to go into a joint venture, is what can go wrong. And I have a list of everything I've come across in the last 20, 30 years that can go wrong. Okay. And I go through that list with 3 or 4 farmers or whoever they are coming together. And so when it comes to the heat of the moment and something's gone wrong, then hopefully what they'll think, we discussed that, and this is what we'll do, rather than say, oh, what the heck do we do now? Yeah.
And are you finding that list, you must have to change that list year on year, because landscape changes, doesn't it? So you must have different risks today than
Yeah, possibly. I tweak it, but I'm adding to it all the time as well. Yes. Yeah. So a typical example would be two or three farmers come together and divide everything on an acreage basis, area basis. But then you find out two or three that one farm has a lot higher yields than others, etc. And so if you're sharing yields, then that needs sorting. But we have ways of dealing with all of those. Yeah, we didn't 20, 30 years ago, but we've got experience on the way.
Yeah, I guess this is where that handshake isn't quite good enough, right?
No, exactly. No,
I would definitely agree with Gary on that you really need to, it's all kind of smiles and sunshine when you get started, but you really need to think as well, what happens when we want out of this? What happens when, how does that function, and what happens if a party like us wants to leave? How will that work? How will people not be left in the lurch? So I think you really have to think, if this breaks down, what is the route out as well? Definitely agree with Gary on that.
Exit clauses.
Yeah. So is it worth maybe talking through what some of these risks are, Gary, in terms of what we should be considering, and also who is best to take advice from?
Yeah, sure. So risk management is key in the industry, and I'm finding that I'm doing quite a few. I've got 2 more talks to do before Christmas on risks in farming, basically. And I just did one last week at Harper Adams on risk as well. So managing risk and managing risks, as far as I'm concerned, is quite wide. So, for example, 1/3 of all farmers don't have a will. Okay. So, and that is a huge risk. Okay, so it's managing a lot of that, and I, to be honest, I feel guilty that I earn a lot of money from situations where they go wrong, from what I would call dysfunctional families, and I think, as we all know, when I give talks, I always ask, how many of you know a dysfunctional family, and most people in the audience put their hand up. So the industry is full of dysfunctional families, unfortunately. But it's so easy to get it sorted. And to before you get into that situation. So I've got a slide, I think, which is a risk register that we could share. Which is that one. Yeah, this is an example of a risk register. So and I call this a sleeping tablet, basically, because it helps you sleep at night. So what you've got, you on the left hand side, you put down all the risks that you can think about, financial, statutory, family in there as well, governance, all there, and then the likelihood and effect in low, medium and high, and then the column on the right hand side is a strategy to deal with them. And if you've actually got an answer to all of those, well, you're sorted. So if you go down to the bottom there, partnership agreement out of date. So many, when I get called into farms, they either say, well, we have got a partnership agreement, but we can't find it. We haven't seen it for about 5 years or 10 years. We had it in the 70s or something. And then, have you got a will? No, well, we haven't got a will. We haven't been around to getting a will yet. Family constitution is like a family agreement. So those are some of the largest risks in farming, in the viability of farming nowadays, are people. They're people risks. And going back to the word, dysfunctional families. So in the benchmarking I do, and I probably, this is a bit personal, I suppose, but but most of the people in the top 20, in the bottom 25%, don't get on, and so it's a family thing. So the more the family gels and communicates, the better. So if you went through this with a whole 2 or 3 generations of discussing this, death, divorce and succession is in there. Okay. And all those topics, in my opinion, are very important in a farming family to get those right. And then the family would be gelling together. Okay, so and I think the next slide, Linda, just shows all of that in a model. So you've got the likelihood at the bottom, low, medium, high, and the effect at the top. So those 1, 2, 3, 4 crosses in the top right, you don't want those. That's a high likelihood and a high effect on the business. So that top right quadrant should be blank, basically. That would be the aim in there. And going through that with a family helps hugely. they all get together and understand and make sure father's got a will and make sure what father wants to the will, etc. And that's a huge step forward to start off with. And then out of that, you might decide, okay, let's see if we can actually ask a neighbour. So can we work with the neighbour to spread costs, etc. But these are the foundation stones. And if you haven't got a lot of these, haven't got a partnership agreement, haven't got a will, etc., and you go into a joint venture with 2 or 3 other farmers, well, you haven't got the foundation stones right. You need to be in a very good place to start off with.
Oh, sorry, Gary, could I just butt in? On
Sure.
your example risk register, so you've got like the family AGM. I'm just wondering, like,
Sure.
does someone you sit in there
step,
and mediate that? Like, do you sit there and make sure that keeps running smoothly and it is a business meeting and the emotions taken out of it? Or
100%, Claire. So if we step back, Linda, one slide,
yeah,
if that's possible, please. So yeah, family AGM, absolutely. So I do a whole load of family AGMs actually, and that's the first thing that I do. Sometimes they're on Teams because the next generation, sometimes halfway around the world, are all over the country, and so but ideally to get together. So coming up to Christmas, I've got quite a few families I have told get together at Christmas. Obviously I won't be there at Christmas, but get together at Christmas and discuss what you want and come back in January. So I think a family AGM is so important, Claire. So and it's managing the expectations, because when you get a wider family, you get parents. Okay, let's start off with parents who have, let's say, 3 the next generation, and those 3 are married. Okay, so you've got 6 people at the next generation, including spouses, and it's managing the expectations of the people, of the individuals. What does son or daughter that may be home, and the ones that are not home, and in managing the spouse's expectations of the ones that are not home is the key difficulty. But we have ways of dealing with that. And I have various ways of how to handle those and to deal with those in a logical and legal way.
Brilliant. And Claire, how does this sit with you in terms of your business? I mean, does what Gary says like resonate with your situation? I mean, not to ask you flat out if you've got these things sorted, but
have you got a will, Claire? Have you got a will?
Yes. We haven't got a will, and we need.
You haven't got wills?
No, and we've got 2 little boys, and we've got a hefty life insurance as well. But
this is exactly what I was saying. So we have an example here.
Don't scold her, please.
Yeah, sorry, no, sorry. Yeah, good job you're not on the screen, Claire. So, but yeah, 1/3 of all farmers don't have wills, and this is it's amazing, isn't it? Sorry, Claire, I butted in.
No, that's fine. But so we're a partnership. My husband and I run it as a simple partnership. We're new entrants, and we're often kind of very grateful for that, to be honest, when we see these dysfunctional families that are to a penny in the industry. That we're on our own and we don't have to deal with that. But obviously going forward, if our boys want to join, they're things that we do need to be thinking about in future, but at the minute it doesn't affect us.
No, sure. Okay.
Thankfully we got out.
I understand that, but suggest you get wills. Yeah.
100%. Christmas job.
Okay, there you
It
go.
doesn't feel very Christmassy, does it? But it does feel like maybe it's worthwhile them.
It's a quiet time, so it's a good thing just to sit down, isn't it? And
it is
organise.
A good, quiet, reflective time for farming. Yeah. Okay, so so I've been. Those are the sort of risks that I call I call risks to the business to get the foundation stones correct.
Yeah, perfect. So moving on then just a little bit, do we want to talk a little bit more specifically about setting up a joint venture, perhaps?
Okay, so I think what I'll say, so the most common one and the one I prefer, and I think it's the future for the industry really. It's not contract farming, it's not share farming, sorry Claire, but share farming obviously is relevant to some people, but for existing farming businesses, I think sharing machinery in a separate business is the way forward. And what we've developed over the last 20 years, because we've got some of these going for more than 20 years now, What we've developed over the years is a combination, wait for it, of a machinery syndicate and a share farming agreement. So it's a combination of both, Claire. So what we do, we share. So, and I think there's another slide, actually, slide 6 should be. Yep. There we go. So the 3 rugby balls. So if forget about the top one at the moment, and we just look at the very bottom one there, separate business, machinery and labour cost centre. So we've got here is 4 farmers, and you see the percentage area of land that they're bringing in. They're bringing into the business, and hopefully they add up to 100. So 20, 30, 35 and 15. So and that's the area of land that's brought into this. We're excluding the top at the moment. Just look at the very bottom first, the blue one. So that bottom one should definitely not be a limited company for tax purposes. I come across quite a few that have been set up as limited companies. So for everybody to just on that point, if you buy machinery in there, you get annual investment allowances up to £1 million. And so, but those annual investment allowances create tax relief, and you'll get tax losses, and you can't get those tax losses out of that limited company. So it's very, very difficult. So you get those. So you get tax losses locked up in companies. So that should be an LLP. The blue one should be an LLP, and then we have a cropping share farming agreement. So each farmer there, so the farmer on the left, 20% of the land area has 20% of the overall cropping of all that business. So therefore, it doesn't matter where the combine is on a wet day or a damp day, or it doesn't matter where the drill is in the autumn. Okay, it doesn't matter because everybody's sharing the crops. So it's a route of not to fall. It's a route to not falling out, basically. Having those bottom two. So it's and we run they're in the very bottom ones you see as a cost centre. So we don't charge per hectare or per acre. If we buy diesel, then the diesel is shared 20, 30, 35, 15%. By those farmers. So it's a cost centre, and we found that once those are developed, I mentioned earlier on, quite often you'll get a neighbouring farmer, not another neighbouring farmer, knocking on the door. Please, can I join the gang? Okay, so and you decide, well, I don't particularly want you to join, but you can be an associate member, but not a full member. Okay. Or no, we don't want you at all, but we will contract your land if you want to. So you can see we're getting then a combination of, so if we contract the land, we're doing contract farming. Okay, we've got an associate member of the machinery and labour cost centre at the bottom there, the machinery syndicate, and then we've got the full members of the machinery syndicate. Okay, and then the associate members maybe crop sharing as well, be part of the share farming agreement. So you can see it's quite a complex, but once you've built that up, you get other people joining. Some of ours are up to 10,000 acres of these structures, and they are run very, very efficiently. So the average farm, and Claire, I'm sure you know that you're a dairy herd, of course, but you don't focus on overheads. You know, you focus on the gross margin of the herd, I presume. So like arable farmers here don't focus on machinery; they're just a big blob of costs. So, but having them separated out in that bottom blue rugby ball there, quite a flat rugby ball. So in there actually focuses on the costs themselves, and that helps as well, actually, because most farmers focus on variable costs, seed, fertilizer, chemicals. The labour and machinery are just a cost, and a huge cost quite often. So that's an example of machinery joint venture. Sorry,
I was just going to say, there's been a question that's come through in the chat, which feels like it's pertinent to this conversation, which is, how does it work when it comes to drivers in machinery rings? Who's paying for who?
In machinery rings?
Yeah.
Right. That's a blast from the past, yeah. So I have been involved in machinery rings in the past, but I'm not involved anymore. Some of them are still going, of course. So that's a machinery ring is when there's a database of people who are available and available to do work, and a database, and obviously people who want work done. So basically, a farmer goes along with his tractor or hires the tractor out. So the question, Linda, specifically was who drives? Is that right?
Who's paying for who?
Oh, sorry. Okay. So basically, it's they're charged across. They're just purely purely contracting rates, or quite often bit slightly lower than full contracting rates. And the machinery ring itself, which is normally a cooperative, takes a small percentage to run the database, basically. So it's matching people together.
Right.
I don't know if that answers it. Particularly, I don't know.
But we'll see if they come back with more questions.
Okay, if they come, yeah, please come back. Absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. I think Claire might be on mute, so I just want to see if she can unmute herself to see if
Claire is on mute.
There we go. Right. So talked a lot about this then, this sort of joint venture machinery, and so then I guess we've sort of touched on this a little bit. But what kind of questions or considerations should you discuss with the other person you're possibly getting into business with when considering this sort of an agreement?
Sure. Yeah. So yes. So that's where you need somebody like myself, I think, to who has experience of running them and has seen the good and the bad. Particularly the bad. You know, it's the problems that you need to focus on. And quite right, as Claire said earlier on, that that it's the get out clause, you know, the exit clause as well. So it's quite excited getting into these agreements, but I've had only 2 or 3, I think, where individuals will have to get out for various personal reasons, etc. And I think the other major point as well is I look at the balance sheets of those individuals that are fairly early on.
Yeah.
So if you have got just very simply 2 farmers coming together, and one's got $500,000 in the bank, and the other's got half a million of overdraft, you know, there's a bit of a mismatch there.
Yeah.
In terms of well, should we buy a new bit of kit or not? No, I can't afford to, you know, etc. So you need them roughly in balance on within the balance sheets. But otherwise they can be tenants. You know, I've got tenants mixing with landowners, etc. And there's quite a lot going back to the original matrix. I had well-being down there, and well-being in the industry and stress in the industry, particularly after the budgets, is quite huge at the moment. And I do find that that you know, individuals coming from a lonely job on when you're on a 500-acre farm, you're probably doing it all yourself.
Yeah.
You're working really hard. You can't afford to pay anybody, and you've got your son or daughter perhaps helping out, but then teaming up with 2 other farmers, it just lifts the clouds. You know, I'm talking personally now. It really lifts those clouds, and that's what people have said to me. So it's not just about economics, and this is what, you know, this is why we need to be thinking people all the time as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
Yes, we can.
Yay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm unmuting, trying desperately to get it to work. But I would say, like Gary said, obviously, you know, when you're going into a joint venture, you often feel like you're being the one that's kind of been vetted, but you also need to vet the other person. So I you know, feel free to ask for character references, ask for their accounts and things of the other person too, because if it's going to be a joint venture, then, you know, things have to work both ways. And even for tenancies, I think it's good questions to ask, you know, say like the council, could I speak to some of your other tenants and find out what you're like as a landlord?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
I
think that's a bad question to ask. Just to put that point in there.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Yeah. So one of the questions, Linda, I think earlier on was as the share farming agreement grows, etc. And you get more members on board, How do you keep control of the business? And I think we had that. It was an example where you ended up with just 10% of the area or something. But all agreements are one member per vote, one vote per member. Sorry, the other way around. One vote per member. So if I have 10% of the land in a big, and there were 7 or 8 farmers got together, I think 7 or 8 farmers is quite getting it to be almost like a farming by committee, though. So you try to keep it fairly small and tight. But if I've got 10% of the land, I have a vote.
Yeah.
If there's 5 farmers and I've got 10% of the land, I have a vote, 20% of the vote. So it's per member, not on an acreage basis. Hopefully that answers that question. That was raised.
Well, they sort of went on to if you start getting more and more members, how do you keep control over your business? And then kind of went on to ask even further in terms of, how do you share the rights but maintain control? Can a founding member become a chairman? And would that then become like a cooperative?
Yeah, sure. Yes. Not really, not a cooperative, I don't think, unless you wanted it to be, So I think a cooperative is a different entity. And I haven't mentioned that before, but we do have. I've spent a lot of time working with co-ops. But they tend to be completely different, and they tend to be a company limited by guarantee, another technical term, which is a limited company, but doesn't have shares. And most clubs are, and a club or a co-op, it's a similar sort of thing. Yes, but so it's not based on the land you put in, so you don't get a minority interest because it's what you have a vote, like in a co-op you have everybody has a vote. But a co-op is something different, cooperative. But if you think back to what I'm just thinking, if you think back to the slide of the 3 rugby balls. And so where you're sharing, if 3 or 4 farmers there, I think, sharing all the machinery, sharing all the crops. Okay. Now each one of those 4 were completely individual businesses, which is there we go. So each one of those 20, 30, 35 and 15, each one of those are robustly running their businesses from HMRC purposes. Okay. But hey, look at an arable farm, what aren't you sharing? Okay, so you're and so when you talk about co-op, and that is a model that as I said, I've had going for about 20 years, and it runs really, really well. I haven't mentioned the top rugby balls in natural capital. That's something. So if you've got 5,000 acres here between those farms, you could start doing some SFI and some natural capital work as well, rather than on your own. And BNG or carbon or something, yes, that's another subject, of course. But you can actually start sharing that and working together. Okay, yeah. So that is my model for the future of arable farming.
Amazing.
Well, go that far.
We've had another actually question come through that isn't probably just this, but just more generally, and obviously it's a topic on everyone's mind, just in terms of, do any of these models that we've talked about have any sort of particularly positive or negative impacts on the APR or BPR relief?
Yeah, good points. Yeah. Right. So this is quite technical. Okay.
Okay. So brace yourselves.
Now, if you go back to my first slide, my matrix slide.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was also a question of whether these bring opportunity. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do the potential changes to inheritance tax give us an opportunity to look at succession planning? And I thought if I just deal with that first, and absolutely yes, but it's a very draconian way of doing it. There's a lot of damage going to happen in the industry, but all that damage happens, as a result, we will have a lot. It'll kickstart a lot more succession a lot earlier. Okay, so but if there's any farming left, yes, well, there will be, of course, but so it's a very draconian way of doing it, but yes, it will, and several commentators have said this over the last few weeks, that it will help succession, and yes, it will, but a lot of collateral on the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we technically now, if you if you had a normal share farming agreement, a share farming joint venture. So in share farming, you actually share the gross margin. So if I was a farmer, and Linda, you were a share farmer with me, and so a contractor, if you like, or a new starting in the industry. So in dairy or in arable, I'd be giving away some of that margin to you, as is happening with Claire. So what impact is that on my business? So I'm a partnership. It will bring down my farming, decreases my farming turnover because I'm sharing it with you. Okay. Now, for our APR purposes, agricultural property relief purposes, we need to be wholly or mainly farming. So if I have some rental units that I'm renting, or in a couple of farm workers' cottages I'm renting out, I have those in my partnership sheltered for inheritance tax purposes called BALFA. I haven't got time to go into a lot of detail on all this. So which is BALFA is case law. So I'm sharing all those. Now, if you think I need to be wholly or mainly farming, and I start sharing my gross margin with a share farmer, then I am probably shooting myself in the foot for inheritance tax purposes in my business. Okay, so this brings us back to the hybrid model that I've developed. Is that I would be if I would be paying you, Linda, as a share farmer, I would be paying you on a contracting basis, not sharing my gross margin. However, the amount I'd be paying you would be the same amount as my gross margin, but I've just badged it as contracting. So hey presto, I've still got the full farming operation. So that's a trap to be wary about. And Claire, I don't know if that relates to you at all. If you understood that, if you were sharing the gross margin in that dairy herd with the farmer, obviously the farmer's wholly or mainly trading was being put at risk by bringing it down. Otherwise, what I would say, if you go back to the earlier model,
slide 3,
the first one. If you look at inheritance tax up there, so share farming, contracting, and contract farming. So that's so inheritance tax. Question mark is there, and a cross in share farming, contracting, which I've just described. Contract farming, there are quite a few contract farming agreements around that are not operating as they should. So where the contractor, for example, is funding the variable costs for various reasons. So please beware that and particularly now with HMRC on the run, and we're seeing an increasing amount of questions asked by HMRC. They have got a special division for high net worth people, and as we're all aware, we are all high net worth, aren't we, farmers? So we've been badged as high net worth. So we've got this section in HMRC that are really looking into these, and so I would suggest anybody who is not contract farming by the strict rules of contract farming should do so as soon as possible.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Gary. I'm just conscious of time. We've got about 5 minutes left. And Claire, I just wanted to actually come to you just to kind of sum up in terms of, in your experience, is there anything that you would have done differently on your farming journey so far?
I don't think I would have been in such a hurry to find a tenancy. So I think a lot of people think that like a tenancy is kind of almost like the be all and end all until obviously you get to kind of purchasing land. But actually, like, we would still go back to share farming, but on a big enough, venture that there was a split there that we would still have. And like Gary had said before, it can be quite lonely. So I think his 500-acre analogy was obviously on an arable farm. So we run 264 acres with 140 cows on a very extensive system. But it is purely my husband and I. So I manage employment, and I think getting to a team environment just means that work-life balance is much better. So I do think kind of be wary of going the tenancy route. You have to do what's best for you, and that kind of matrix that Gary's got, I suppose it's just looking across the whole thing, and weighing up the options. And also with a tenancy, as we all know, they're few and far between, and we would go anywhere in the country. yeah, and so we applied for a farm in Staffordshire. We were lucky enough to get interviewed, but we didn't get it, and that was almost 3 years ago now. So sometimes with a tenancy, you can also end up a little bit trapped. Like, what's the next step? So obviously there's off-farm investment, but yeah, what where next is a critical question as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I've got quite a few tenant farmers, livestock and arable, and yeah, it's quite difficult. That the rents you've got to pay, Claire, and there's not a lot left. So a tenant farmer with quite a large overdraft is not a comfortable position to be in, unfortunately. No.
Gary, one final question. I don't know if you'll have an answer to this, but do you have any recommendations for software to handle crop costings? Has come through.
Crop costings. So that there are various ones around, and no, I'm not in the game of actually one over the other. So there's a farm plan one, obviously. There are various ones. Yeah.
Okay, but there's not one that particularly stands out for you to consider.
No, I don't think so. No, it's horses for courses. So there are various ones, and that with mapping facilities, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant.
With that, I would say like potentially check with your contractor or whatever, and you want something that you're not going to be duplicating all the time, don't you? So make sure whatever they're using can feed into
it. Good points.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, very absolutely. Good. And agronomist as well. If you're using an agronomist,
yeah, that's great. Okay, well, as we are 1 minute before 6, I think we will call it. That said, if there's been questions that have come through that we haven't had a chance to answer, we will get those jotted down and probably write answers, and then the follow-up email that we send out towards the end of the week, we'll try and get those questions answered. So don't worry, we will get back to you on those things. But really, just wanted to thank both of our speakers for your time today. This has been really great. I think we've given our audience a lot to think about. I've come away with more questions, I think, than answers at this stage, but that's a good thing. It's good to kind of get yourself thinking. And I think this is regardless of if you're sort of at the start, middle, or perhaps end of your farming career. It's been really interesting to hear all of this advice and real life stories from you, Claire. And other than that, we will thank you very much for your time and hope to see you again. We do have another couple of webinars. We've got one in January on understanding farm finances, and then another very topical one on succession planning later on in February. So hopefully we will get to see you there. But for now, thank you very much. And thank you, Gary, and thank you, Claire, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Really enjoyed it.